Welcome to the Friday edition of Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Alone, Lakeena McGee, my partner, she'll be here in a few minutes. But until then, your show will take over the reins for this show for the time being. I am Sydney Brown, aka Sid the Kid. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app. You want to know why? Because we said so. That's why. Download that Sports Zone Chicago app today, wherever you get your apps, whether it's Apple, iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, wherever you get your apps. Make sure it says Sports Zone Chicago because you can listen and watch any of our other 5 live shows, including this one, Second City Sports. And if you happen to miss any of our live shows, you can go back and watch them and listen to them at your own leisure. Make sure you also follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Sports Zone Chicago. Once again, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Sports Zone Chicago. If you want to catch the audio version of this podcast, you can do so by subscribing to War on Anchor. We're available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeart Radio app. Make sure you type this in your search engine boxes on those podcast platforms. WARR on Anchor. Once again, WARR on Anchor. You can follow the guys at War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at War Media. That's WARR Media. And thank you very much in advance for your support. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our lovely program here at Second City Sports. We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have an opinion of any of our topics during our 2-hour extravaganza, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago on Facebook or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube and type in your questions in the comments in the comment section. You're sure to get them up on the screen for you. Let's start off this Friday edition of Second City Sports, the first Friday show for the month of February. By first of all, happy Black History Month to all of you, to all those people listening and watching out there. The topic that's been talked about all week long is the Brian Flores, former NFL coach, who filed a lawsuit back on February 1st. Flores filed a class action lawsuit against the NFL, the New York Football Giants, the Denver Broncos, and the Miami Dolphins organizations alleging racial discrimination. The suit claims that the text messages he received from New England Patriots head coach Bill Belichick, as well as media reports, showed that the New York Giants decided to hire Brian Daboll, the former offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills, as head coach before interviewing any minority candidates. The Giants, who scheduled an interview with Flores for January 27th, had allegedly decided on Daboll by January 23rd. Flores also accused John Elway in the Broncos management of conducting another sham head coach interview with him back in 2019, arriving an hour late and appearing hungover after drinking heavily the night before. The lawsuit additionally alleges that Brian Flores' tenure with the Dolphins team owner Stephen Ross pressured him to deliberately lose games, offer him $100,000 each for each loss for the Dolphins to get a better draft picks for the following season. And to tamper with the quarterback before free agency, which turned out to be Tom Brady. Of course, Tom Brady went on to Tampa Bay from New England. If Flores refused to tank, achieving 2 consecutive winning series, and refused to tamper, Ross fired him and lied about why. The Palm Beach Post reported that the quarterback Tom Brady that I just mentioned, and also with the lawsuit demands damages and injunctive relief in the form of changes to hiring, retention, termination, and pay transparency practices for coaching and executive positions in the NFL. Here's the thing, guys. I don't. If Brian Flores didn't file this lawsuit, I don't think that we'll be talking about this as much. But with Brian Flores filing this lawsuit, do we think that it's going to change anything? I'm not sure. Remember, this is the 20th year of the Rooney Rule, and a couple of years ago, we had about 8 or 9 black head coaches that were hired, but it's still a long process. We still have a long way to go before we get to that point. As I bring in my co-host, Miss Lakeena McGee, to the show. Lakeena, how are you?
Sorry about that, folks. Had a busy morning, so yeah, the Brian Flores situation. You know what? Look, I say good for him. I mean, look, it doesn't take a rocket science to say that there's a lot going on here with with the hiring practices. You saw the coaching carousel from the National Football League so far with, Doug Peterson been hired as the head coach of the Jags, but yet, all the vacancies so far have been filled by, white coaches, whether young or a little bit older. And look, for Flores, I mean, all this started, Armando, I don't know if our buddy Armando, what's up, Armando, said that hopes civil rights leaders get
Welcome back,
involved.
Armando.
What's up? I know you've been out of the off the grid for a little bit, Armando. Nice to have you back. But yeah, I mean, you know what? I don't know if it's gonna get to that. I don't think it's gonna get to like maybe an Al Sharpton or somebody like that ilk, try to come in and and then probably they'll try to intervene. I don't think it's gonna get to that point. I think it's not. There might be. I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know how you feel about this. I wouldn't be surprised if they settle this out of court, because I think the last thing the NFL needs is sort of like something like this to kind of, go off the rails, if you will.
Mhm.
And I think Flores is a very smart guy. He knows that he's probably going to end up getting blackballed when all is said and done. And I think they're going to settle. I don't think they're going to let it get to a point where, I don't know if they're going to NFL's not going to want like a long trial, but we'll see. But like I said, I don't think it's going to get to the courts. I think it's going to get settled, and unfortunately, it will be right back to where we started.
I'm with you. Looking at think and Jason Palmer, our colleague at Sports on Chicago, he has a show called "What's Up, Cousin" with his cousin Lance
Yes.
C. Urban every Monday from 6 to 8 on
Hmm.
Sports on Chicago live in a living color. He was on Shana Maya on Wednesday. He's basically said the same thing that's basically when the story broke. Lakeena, even there's a lot of holes in my opinion that's missing from this story in terms of Brian Flores. I think it will come out in due time, but Lakeena, even if some of the allegations are true or some of them are not, does the NFL really want to open up Pandora's box? I don't think so.
I doubt it. That's why I
I
said
don't
it's
think
probably going to
so.
get to. Yeah, that's why I said it's probably going to end up getting settled. And I think they don't want to have those floodgates open, those Pandora's box. The stuff
Mhm.
with Elway and the rest of the brass, and with the Broncos and the Giants and what they allegedly did, and the Dolphins. Stuff, and that stuff with the throwing games. That's that's that kind of came out. Also, Hugh Jackson. When he was with the Browns head coach. It's definitely one of those things where you're kind of like, no, you know what, it's not. Yeah, it just isn't. Yeah, like I said, I don't think they're going to want to open that Pandora's box of things happening. I just don't see it. It's not. It's not. People were hoping that we'll burn it down, tear it down. No, it's not going to happen.
You're listening to Second City Sports on the Friday edition, the first show for the month of February on the Friday show for the month of February right here on Sports on Chicago. We're live in the living color. Sid Lakeena here with you discussing the Brian Flores pending lawsuit against the NFL, the New York Football Giants, the Miami Dolphins, and the Denver Broncos. Lakeena, I know some people have said over the last 24, 48 hours or so that the Brian Flores, who was we were on the air on Black Monday when he was fired. It took the league by surprise, both his own players and his coaching fraternity from around the National Football League. Some people may say that he's a man scorned. That could be at the end of the day. Right now, we're not sure. Like I said, there's a lot of missing pieces in the story, so I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon just yet. But I want to break down a couple of elements in the story. Now, the Bill Belichick text, you can how many times that you sent a message to somebody, whether it's email or text a message or call somebody, you meant to call somebody, you call somebody else. It's happened. I've done it a few times, not often, but we all have done it a couple of times in our
Mhm.
lives. So if there's something else to those Bill Belichick text messages, okay, but right now I'm not so sure. Now, the John Elway situation, how are you going to prove that? You can't illegally record somebody without their knowledge, and I think that's all across the board. So yeah, we know that all these companies and all wherever office you work from or what companies you work from, we all know that it has security cameras everywhere you go. Okay, but if you have actual security footage, call me crazy, but if you have
Mhm.
actual security footage or audio that is clear to listen to, how are you going to prove that? I'm not saying that didn't happen. I'm not saying it's not possible, but in this situation, unless you have ocular proof, that's going to be hard to prove in the court of law. Now, I want to get to this third part first. The owner of the Miami Dolphins, Stephen Ross, of course, he's been known to throughout the last few years to give causes, his own money to social justice projects and things
Mm-hmm.
along that line. And I'm not saying that this doesn't happen where an owner tells coaches to throw games or to develop players because not they're not there and they're playing to win right away. I get that part, but once again, how are you going to prove that what Stephen Ross said was true? Of course, Stephen Ross came out with a statement says that he didn't say that. Of course, the Cleveland Browns personnel came out and said yesterday that with Hugh Jackson, which I'll get to in a moment, I don't know anything about that, blah, blah, blah. John Elway said we conducted a fair interview about me getting drugged. I don't know anything about that. That's not true, and yada, yada, yada. But with Stephen Ross, especially now with these professional leagues married to these gambling companies like DraftKings and FanDuel, the integrity of the NFL could be shambled, okay, if the Stephen Ross allegations are true. One, he should lose his right to own the team if that allegation is true. And number two, you asking fans to pay hundreds of dollars for a ticket for one game, tailgate, and you know these sports books, including here in Chicago, whenever they build that new Bears stadium in Arlington Heights, they're gonna have sports books inside the arena, okay, for fans to bet. And you have owners with mentalities like that to tank games. That's just not acceptable. I also listen to former players on these radio shows these last 24, 48 hours. I think Bart Scott of ESPN brought up a great point. You're an NFL player. You worked all your life from high school, college, and out to the pros. You worked hard all week to prepare to play a game. Are you going to tell those players that worked their tails off to go tank a game? I don't think so. And that's just not acceptable. It goes on their resume, and especially if you're a free agent. The teams that looking to pick you up for your services, they're gonna look at, did this guy play hard on this play? Did he quit on that play? Did he go through the motions? That it's just a whole lot of barriers there, and like you said, I don't think the NFL wants to touch.
And it's going to be sort of interesting too if there is proof. I mean, it proved that that he did say these things. I've talked about Mr. Ross, and I know Hugh Jackson and what he said when with the brass at Cleveland at the time. Was saying the same thing. Hey, let's tank for this guy. It's just you better have proof. Look, no one's saying that this doesn't happen. We've seen it happen, unfortunately. Tony Dungy wrote a really a really beautiful statement. You can go through his Twitter account. He had to wait 20 years for his opportunity to become a head coach, even though he worked under Chuck Noll and many other various coordinators, and the players loved him. He still had to wait 20 years to get his first opportunity as a head coach. Now, as far as the game aspect of it, yeah, that's why the NFL's kind of been up front, in front of with the FanDuels and those type of places, to kind of get in front of the gambling aspect with fantasy and those type of things and parlays. So if this thing here with the tanking or throwing games and such, yeah, I don't think it's gonna, hopefully, it doesn't open like that Pandora's box. I mean, all this other stuff with what the Giants allegedly did and what Elway allegedly did, and the rest of the brass, that's gonna be hard to prove unless you have like video of it or you have text messages, and emails and such. But this stuff here, I mean, again, unless you have proof, I mean, you better don't throw this out there unless you have proof. So, I hope he does for his own sake. But I think it's not going to get to a point where it's going to be, met with in front of, court, in front of a judge. I think it's going to get settled. I think, all this stuff is going to, get settled. And one of the parts of the deal is that he may have to be blackballed from the NFL because people rarely sue the NFL and live to tell about it. So.
Exactly. Look at Colin Kaepernick. So we're not going to go through that whole situation, but he took the money from the NFL for various other reasons. We won't get into that. People could do the research on themselves. Listening to Second City Sports, the Friday edition, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. We're live in 11 color. Sid Lakeena here with you. We have a few minutes left to talk about the Brian Flores lawsuit situation. You have a question or comment for us regarding this topic, you can go to facebook.com/Sports Zone Chicago or go to Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Lakeena, there's one person that have been thinking about for the last 24 to 48 hours. I know this guy is mad that his team lost in the AFC Championship game last week. I'm talking about Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. He's been a candidate for these head coaching jobs the last 2 or 3 years. I believe that he's been a victim of his success, and that's why he hasn't gotten a head coaching job. Lakeena, imagine if the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Cincinnati Bengals last Sunday. Remember, this is the weekend of the Pro Bowl, which no one cares about. You heard some players talking about this as this has been big news. Call me crazy, Lakeena. This is going to dominate Super Bowl week next week in Los Angeles. You know the NFL does not want any of this smoke, but you know, and I know that it's coming. If you're Eric Bieniemy, in a way, people can still reach out to him for comment right now, but he doesn't have to talk, okay? But imagine if the Kansas City Chiefs were getting ready to play the LA Rams next week in Los Angeles. Don't tell me that every reporter from around the world would have asked him a question regarding Brian Flores. Are you with Brian Flores? Are you going to join him in a lawsuit? Does this mean you finally going to get the job right now? Who you with? Who you against? And it would have been a crap show. So I know Eric Bieniemy still wants to coach in the National Football League, but I think on the flip side, I think in a way that he doesn't have to deal with this head on in front of a worldwide media next week in the Super Bowl on Los Angeles. I think this part is a blessing in disguise for him, as far as had to deal with the media while you're trying to get your team prepared to win a championship.
It's sort of, I don't know if it's going to get good to be. There might be some question about it. I think if you're the NFL, you want to try to control the narrative and say, you know what, there will be no questions. I think if players are free to maybe like express their opinions, but I don't think that they want to kind of get deep into it because they don't want it to be go forward towards the game. It doesn't want to be taken away towards the NFL. The Super Bowl, the big stage, in Los Angeles. There'll probably going to be some limits too. I mean, with COVID cases, it has plateaued in Los Angeles. It's still a very big issue. So I think there are going to be other things that they're going to be worried about, besides this. But I think they're going to try to control the message and maybe control the the aspect of it. It's like, what, if you want to, they may, I don't know if they're going to warn people, players and coaches not to talk about it. They might mention it. I mean, maybe Zach Taylor and Sean McVay may mention it kind of in passing and maybe express their opinions, but I don't think it's going to get to a point where I'm sure they're going to tell their guys, look, if you want to express your opinion about it, fine, but don't get to the point where it becomes a distraction where, it's going to be played all over, and all over the social media and all over the internet where it becomes a distraction. So I said, look, if you want to express your opinion about it, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. But, just don't say anything that's not going to take attention away from the game itself.
Couple more things about the subject before we break for the bottom of the hour. This is the 20th, as I mentioned at the top, this is the 20th year of the Rooney Rule. Lakeena, remember the 2001 Chicago Bears? They had the turnaround season, 13-3.
Yep.
And the first year of that rule, even though the Bears finished the following year in Champaign, I believe it was 4-12, but Greg Blash was up for the head coaching job. I forgot what the other guy's name was, but Greg Blash was up for the San Francisco job after Steve Mariucci was let go for the 2002 playoffs. Remember, the 49ers were showcasing him in front of the media. Well, he's a candidate for the job and this and that. He's the right guy for the job. And guess what happened? Dennis Erickson. Yes, that Dennis Erickson that led the University of Miami to the national championship in 1991. The 49ers signed him in the back door, and he got the job.
Yep.
Now, fast forward 2 years later, has this system worked? Yes and no. Will all 32 teams have a black head coach? No, that's unrealistic. And as I mentioned, back in 2017, 2018, we had, I think, 8 or 9 black head coaches. And remember, we talked about Steve Wilkes in Arizona. He got a raw deal, not because of his skin color, because he had a broke Sam Bradford, and the organization of the Cardinals wanted, right, and they wanted Cliff Kingsbury, so he got the X. Van Joseph, he lasted 2 years, he got the X. And we only have one black head coach right now, and that's Mike Tomlin. Here's the thing, Lakeena. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know everything, because I don't. No one knows everything, including yours truly. But I go by common sense. This Rooney Rule is worth some years to some years that it hasn't. I was racking my brain for the last 48 hours to come up with a better plan. I'm a realist, not a kumbayas, which means go along to get along. But I cannot come up with a better system, Lakeena. Can you?
Well, yeah, and it's sort of one of those things where I don't know that the rule was flawed from the get-go. I know that our Rooney II, made a comment yesterday saying that yes, there are more black GMs, Minnesota's new GM is black. The Bears' new GM is black. The Lions GM is black. I know there are a few others as well.
Yeah, we have 6 in total right now.
6 in total, and that's that's good because 10 years ago there was maybe one maybe. But now, now, and I think, look, I don't think there's a system. I mean, if you have another system, hey, please tell us, because I don't have an answer. This is going to be sort of a thing where folks are going to hire whoever they're comfortable with. So, unfortunately, that's the world we're living in. And look, if this helps, change, look, I don't know. Look, do you have a solution? I don't think there is a solution. I don't think there is a perfect solution for it. But if it is, hey, please tell me, because I don't. I've been racking my brain too for the last few months. I don't know what to say.
Like I said, this story is far from over. We'll keep you posted on any developments right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakeena, we had to break for 2-2. On the flip side, we had to talk about the Chicago Bulls. A couple of things annoyed me about last night's game. We'll give you our thoughts about the All-Star reserves and the best and worst from the NBA from this past week. And let's see if we can sneak in some college basketball too as we transition over to talking about the game of round ball. Along with Lakeena McGee, which is she, I am Sydney Brown. That's me. You listen to Second City Sports, the Friday edition, live in the living color, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. NBA tonight, the Bulls take on the Raptors. Chicago a half game out of first place in the East, 29-17 overall. Struggling lately, they've dropped 7 of 10. The Raptors coming off a win. They're 6 games out of first, a game over 500, 23-22. Last night, they beat the Hornets 125-113 in Toronto. Tonight's matchup at United Center scheduled for a 7 o'clock tip-off. The Blackhawks are winless in 4 on the road tonight, visiting the Red Wings, 6:30 Central puck drop. The Hawks coming off a 2-0 shutout at Colorado on Monday night. Goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury reportedly receiving interest from the Washington Capitals as the trade deadline approaches. College basketball last night, big upset for number 24 Illinois, 56-55 over number 10 Michigan State. Loyola Chicago beat SIU 59-47. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Deep breaths.
Mi's virtual meditation studio has never been busier.
Imagine not working.
They need a remote assistant to realign their scheduling.
Blank calendar. Sorry, back to your breath.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Make calls, schedule virtual interviews, and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, this is Discover, and we take customer service very seriously. We know that if you have a question or concern about your credit card, that's a serious matter, and you need to talk to a real person about it. So we offer around-the-clock access to seriously talented representatives in the USA. Again, it's a serious endeavor. The only funny thing about it is Bob. If you call us and Bob answers, you're in for a treat. Get 100% US-based customer service and talk to a real person day or night. Discover. Exceptionally common sense.
Welcome back to Sports Zone Chicago, Second City Sports live and in living color on the Friday edition, the first Friday show for the month of February. Happy Black History Month to all those listening and watching out there, along with Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. Let's transition over to the Chicago Bulls, looking as we talk about the 32-19 Chicago Bulls. Let's get into this basketball talk. After defeating the Orlando Magic at the UC on Tuesday by 11, the Bulls in a makeup game from December 16th last night in Toronto, they drop a heartbreaker 127-122 to the Toronto Raptors on the road in overtime. DeMar DeRozan, the all-star starter, had 28 points off of 7-17 shooting. Zach LaVine, who was named all-star reserve, we'll get to the rest of the list in just a moment. He had 15 points on 2 of 4 shooting from downtown, 6 of 10 overall. Kobe White, the only person who did anything consistently coming off the bench, has 16 points, 4 of 8 shooting from downtown. Ayo Dosunmu in the starting role at the point guard position had 8 assists with 11 points and 4 rebounds off of 5 of 12 shooting. Nikolai Vucevic in 39 minutes of action had 30 points and 18 rebounds. Lakeena, I teased before the break, there's something that's been annoying me these last few games from the Chicago Bulls. We talk about the interior defense. We know that's been a problem all year. It's not just Vucevic, but Tony Bradley, who's been a big disappointment. And my guy, Javonte Green, he could defend, but he's a small guy compared to Giannis and Blake Griffin and some of the other big guys, Joel Embiid, who just kill him in matchups because of his height. The interior defense has been a problem for the Bulls all year. We've known this, but the perimeter defense, especially in last night's game, especially in the last few minutes, it annoyed the hell out of me. And yes, we can place blame on the injuries with Caruso and Lonzo Ball to a certain extent. I get that, but shouldn't it be at least a little bit better than what I've been seeing for the last couple of weeks?
It's sort of one of those days where you can tell, look, all their defensive guys are missing right now. Lonzo's, missing. Alex Caruso's missing. I think they're whether, also, Derrick Jones Jr. as well. Believe it or not, and whether folks like it or not, those are your best defensive guys. So, and they're out for a while, and you kind of have to try to score more points, than they do, and than your opponent. And unfortunately, in this case, it worked. It worked against Orlando, but it didn't work against Toronto. And granted, Toronto has been playing better lately, so this will be 4 in a row for them. But
is that AK or Mark Eversley calling you?
I think that might be. They don't. Well, remember, they don't really they're keeping. You know how they keep things too close to the vest, so they wouldn't be calling me.
Oh, okay. I was just making sure.
yeah. But I mean, look, I think people need to remember that he's still a rookie. Leaving Gary Trent Jr., who's been hot lately, wide open. Probably not the smartest thing to do. And like I said before, the zone defense kind of got the best of the Bulls late in that overtime, but. Look, I think I'm not going to freak out here. I know they got a game tonight. They had to travel. It's not like they had to travel because they went from Toronto to Indianapolis, so it's not a long trek. But hopefully they can bounce back tonight against a Pacers team that I don't want to say they're they've been up and down too. They still have a couple of wins against both the LA teams in their road trip and such. But I think your best bet is just hope that you can. If you're the Bulls, you're hoping that maybe you can, finish before the All-Star break. You got like a tough stretch. So you got like 6 games, like 10 days or 7 and 10 days or something like that. So you didn't have a good start in that first game. Now you got to come back. Now Zach's back's bothering him, and Kobe's a little bit banged up as well. I think for some teams, I think the All-Star break can't come soon enough. Mm-hmm. And look, we'll see what happens, in this game tonight. But yeah, Then they got a tough one. They got a matinee against the Sixers. They're like 8-8, I should say, against Joel Embiid, since he joined the league. So, that's another kind of, we went through the schedule.
Yeah, against them so far this season.
Well, no, his entire career.
I know. I'm just saying for this season.
Well, they're 0-2. Yeah, they're over. They've lost like 8 or 9 in a row since he joined the league. So, for me, I think this, the schedule for the Bulls, if you can, you've kind of been up and down with the Bulls with the Sixers, especially you're still shorthanded. And look, you've got like I said before, that tough stretch. You got Indiana tonight, of course, Philly at remember to start the tip-off time at 2:30. Then you got to host Phoenix that next day on Monday. And you got to go at Charlotte, for on Wednesday. That's the ESPN game. And you got, on Friday you got Minnesota. Then you got OKC. Then you got San Antonio. And Sacramento, and Sacramento before you finish the break. The good news is you get those after the Charlotte game, you get those last 4 before the All-Star break at home. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Hopefully you can finish at 5-2, or maybe have it at 4-3. Then you can kind of have go into the break and just hold the fort until Caruso and Ball can come back, and Jones Jr. as well.
Going back to last night's game for Toronto, they had balance scoring. Pascal Siakam, the former All-Star, in 45 minutes of action, he had 25 points off of 9 and 22 shooting. He also had 13 rebounds. Scotty Barnes, who could be another candidate for Rookie of the Year next to Evan Mobley of the Cavaliers, he had 21 points off of 9 and 16 shooting. He also had 8 rebounds. Fred VanVleet, not from Chicago, but he's from downstate in Rockford. Not downstate, but next door neighbor to us in Rockford, Illinois. He in 42 minutes of action, he had 21 points and 9 assists. Gary Trent Jr., as you mentioned, Lakeena, he had the dagger with the 3-point shot made in overtime. He had 16 points off of 3 of 8 shooting from downtown. And Boucher, who came off the bench for Toronto, he had 16 points off of 8 of 14 shooting. Lakeena, we talk about Toronto, who they're now 4 games over the 500 mark at 27-23. We talked about their struggles last year playing in Tampa due to COVID and restrictions from the province of Canada this year. They had a couple of fans in there last night, so maybe slowly they'll start to get some more fans in there as we start to loosen our restrictions. Hopefully, with this variant from COVID. Toronto, we talked about Miami, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But Toronto, if they're able to get their stuff together, maybe they add a piece at the next week's trade deadline. They could be another team. They're in the mix right now as far as the play-in tournament. But this is a nice young squad. They're not the championship team they were 3 years ago, but I don't think you want to play them either.
Well, yeah, look, we'll see what if they do, pull off a move, before a trade deadline next Thursday. And look, it's going to be very interesting, and then look, they had their, a slow start earlier this year. Now they're kind of back into it. I think they're only about half full, and they, there was a time when they couldn't play in front of anyone in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So now I think it's like half full now. They may, after the All-Star break, they, with numbers going down, they may go back at full capacity. So we'll see. But, look, I think Toronto's sort of one of those teams, that you have to, were the kind of like, that one and done with, Kawhi came and won a championship and then left. And then you have all these other, but, look, Van Fleet, we'll get to him in a second. They got Siakam still there. So they got players there. And I think Toronto, are they a contender in the East? Who knows? But, I think if you're a Raptors fan, there are plenty out there. I think you're happy where you're at right now.
Just a reminder, the Bulls Pacers game can be seen tonight at 6 p.m. local time on NBC Sports Chicago. Nationally, it can be seen on NBA League Pass. You're listening to Second City Sports, the Friday edition. We're live in living color on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakeena here with you as we talk Bulls in the NBA. Lakeena, as we always do, let's go backwards as far as the best and worst of the. Before we do that, we mentioned a couple of players that were announced as All-Star reserves for the All-Star game in a couple of weeks in the state of Ohio, Cleveland to be exact, the city. I know you'll go through each of the names, but looking at the list, did anything surprise you in terms of the list? I think maybe one player surprised me, but as far as that, I'm not going to throw my beautiful hard-earning money computer out of the window. I think the coaches got the reserve list from both conferences correct.
Yeah, I think like I have no issues with a lot of these. I mean, Darius Garland's had a great season. We thought that maybe he deserved to get in the All-Star game. Corey Zach got in. That this is his fourth and third, I should say. Jason Tatum, Van Fleet. This is his first. He's just the second, undrafted, the guy that went undrafted. Of course, Hall of Famer Ben Wallace was the other guy to get to the All-Star, game get to the All-Star game. After despite being undrafted. On the West Side, I mean, okay. Nothing really. I mean, Draymond. Well, Draymond's not going to play. He probably will play for another 2 or 3 weeks. So someone's going to take that spot. CP3.
I think it's DeAndre Ayton should take his spot.
Yeah, we'll
from the
see
Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, we'll see if that's the case in that. Booker. Luka. Rudy Gobert. I know he's had some. He's been banged up too. So we'll see if he's able to play in a few weeks. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't have an issue with any of these guys. I mean, it's fine. I mean. Like, no one plays defense in the All-Star game anyway, so I mean, look,
you don't say.
AL got into the Rising Stars game. I think the way they're changing the format a little bit. I think they're doing like a U.S. versus World thing or something to that effect.
Yeah,
like in 4 groups or something like that. So, it's fine. I mean, I really don't have a gripe with any of these.
Yeah, like I'm with you, Lakeena. I said Draymond Green. I know he's been injured the last few weeks. Okay, I understand the numbers. When he was in the lineup, when he was healthy, the Warriors got off to that great start, but they struggled since he's been injured these last few weeks. But outside of that, like I said, we said that Darius Garland and Zach LaVine from the Bulls should make the All-Star team. Both of them did, so I really have no complaints about it. So we'll leave it there and move on. Lakeena, let's start off with last night's games on TNT. We'll take the second one first as we get into the best and worst from around the league. The LA Clippers, even their record at 27-27 after defeating the Los Angeles Lakers 110-111, 111-110 rather, courtesy of Reggie Jackson's game-winning layup. The Los Angeles Lakers trailed by double digits the majority of the second half, but they turned it around late thanks to Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook and Malik Monk with a couple of big baskets down the stretch. But they're just like the Bulls, the interior defense and the paint. Well, that's what's been killing them all year long besides injuries, and the Clippers made them pay last night.
Yeah, they did. I saw a little bit of the end of that game, and Will Jackson hit that that layup with a few seconds left. And look, AD had a shot. He had the shot that he won. I think he shot a
Yeah,
little
I'm
bit too
surprised he
hard.
got it off in the
Yeah, I
way that
mean,
he did. It was not contested.
yeah, I think it was a little bit. It might be a little bit rushed a little bit because they didn't have any timeouts. They could have
Right.
set up the game a little bit, more fully. But look, I think it's well, look. I think if you're the Clippers, like you're doing what you can to kind of like stay afloat until PG comes back and Kawhi could come back hopefully before, by March. So you're kind of like sort of struggling. But look, I think you got to commend the Clippers for doing for trying to
Mhm.
kind of sort of keep things sort of afloat. Now, as far as the Lakers, I mean, look, LeBron didn't play. His knee's been bothering him lately. And
Mhm.
look, AD had had a chance, but you thought that maybe, just maybe, if they had a nice win against Portland, had to come right back. Well, they didn't. Well, they had to travel because they're they
Mhm.
basically had to stay there. They have to stay their same routine at home. But again, this is sort of one of those things. They don't have anything to trade. They have nothing of value. So you're kind of like someone brought up a trade maybe perhaps for the Knicks for send Westbrook to the Knicks, and it's just it wouldn't. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. I don't see that happening for one, and two. Look, Tibbs is having his own issues with the Knicks, and I don't think Westbrook's going to make things any better. So, just forget about
And then,
that.
yeah, and they're talking about perhaps picking up Paul Millsap about the scrap heap for the Lakers, who you really in dire straits when that starts happening because you have no one of value to trade outside of Taylor, Horton, Tucker. Lakeena, let's go to the first game that was on TNT last night. It was the Atlanta Hawks defeating the Phoenix Suns 124-115. Devin Booker had 32 for the Suns. Trae Young off of since 11 shooting from three-point range had a game high 43.
Yeah, that's what propelled them to win that game. I know the Suns. I know they were very disappointed. Now, John Collins, I know he got banged up. So we'll see. He's still in the division with 19, but I know he got a little bit banged up there with I think an elbow injury. So we'll see. How serious that is. And look, I think this is one of those days where you really couldn't stop Trae Young. There was really look. I think the Suns did everything right, but Trae Young had the hot hand, so there was really nothing he could nothing you could do to try to stop him. So look, you're gonna have these types of losses. Look, you're 41-10. Okay, so you're 10th loss of the season out of 51 games. So you don't have to scratch your head about that. But yeah, this is a nice win for Atlanta. I think they needed this win more than the Suns did. I mean, they're one game under 500 now. So we'll see if they start to kind of chug along, if they can pull up a run together before the break. But yeah, like I said, the Hawks need this win more than the Suns did.
Couple more games to highlight quickly. Let's go back to Wednesday's action. The Boston Celtics and the Charlotte Hornets, they're going to battle for that 4th, 5th, 6th spot. The Celtics defeated the Hornets on Wednesday 113-107. But the ESPN game, the first game I had a chance to watch this, at least the fourth quarter, which turned out to be exciting. But John Morant lit up the New York skyline in the national television performance at MSG. The Grizzlies held off the Knicks for a 120-108 win. There, like you mentioned, there's trouble in New York City regarding the Knicks, but Memphis Grizzlies are starting. They're telling people we're for real, and that number 4 spot in the West is no fluke.
Yeah, Memphis was able to bounce back from that overtime loss to the Sixers, a couple of days before, but
Mhm.
they were able to kind of come back and win this game. And look, I mean, I think the Grizzlies, they're kind of one of those teams where can they hang on? I think that's going to be sort of the question. Can they hang on after the All-Star break? It's we'll see. I mean, look, they were able to hold down for with Ja when Ja was banged up, and now they're even better with him being back. Now, again, can they hang on? That's a whole nother story. Now, as for New York, Evan Fournier had 30, to lead the way there. I know, Julius Randle, he hasn't said anything, but I know there's been some, issues there. I know the New York fans are starting to turn on him. So,
Yeah, talking about trading them.
yeah, like kind of like clockwork there, sending him to the Lakers, back to the Lakers, I guess. That's probably where all this stuff's coming from. But yeah, I mean, you're hoping maybe, I think if you're the Knicks, I think that the break can't come soon enough, quick enough, but we'll see. I want to talk about this Utah-Denver matchup. They did. Utah had a nice bounce back win. Of course, Donovan Mitchell finally was able to come back from concussion protocols. And look, I got a chance to watch a little bit of this game via this lovely little laptop here. And Mitchell still didn't play, even though he has cleared protocol. But they did enough to kind of lead the way. Mike Conley Jr. had 17. Trent Forrest, who's been been the guy to kind of try to hold things down, while Mitchell's recovering. He had 18, led the way there. Rudy Gay had 15 off the bench. So they looked pretty good. The Utah did. So hopefully, Ingles is hurt. He's gone for the year with the ACL injury. Hopefully Mitchell can come back for their next game. And I think Utah, they're 31-21 right now. I know they've kind of struggled a bit since those injuries, but we'll see. I know Gobert is still banged up too, so they're trying. I commend the Jazz for that. They're trying to kind of sort of keep things together.
And real quick before we get to the schedule for the weekend slate, the Brooklyn Nets, they need Kevin Durant in the worst way. They lost their first 2 games of the West Coast road trip thus far. They lost at Phoenix on Tuesday, and they had a bad loss at Sacramento on Wednesday.
Six in a row for the Nets they've lost, and I think they did. They heard Kyrie said that they did like a players only meeting, which that's never a good sign when a team is doing that. But it's sort of one of those things where I think they just need Durant back. I think the inconsistencies of the Nets, and look, I don't know what can be done. I know that they didn't look really good against the Kings. If you saw that game a couple of days ago, they just didn't look good at all. I mean, they did what like I said, what they're trying, but you can tell that they desperately miss Durant. I know Claxton had 23. I know Harden was coming back from banged up. He only had 4 points, so that didn't help them either. So it's one of the. I mean, it's one of those days where you're like, they're still going to be a favorite to win. I'm not gonna throw them to the wolves just yet, but they need Durant back. He still got a few weeks before he can come back. I know Joe Johnson had 18 off the bench, but they're going to need Harden to step up along with with Kyrie. Kyrie struggled a little bit as well. He was only 5 for 15, so they just kind of need to come ahead here. And I think, like I said, I don't think Durant can solve some of the problems, but I don't think he's going to solve all the problems. So.
You're listening to Second City Sports, the first Friday show for the month of February. Happy Black History Month, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago. Lakeena, quickly, let's go to some of the key games for this weekend, starting with tonight, which is the Friday night schedule. There is a doubleheader, but not on ESPN. The first game will be at 6 o'clock on NBA TV. It will be the Cleveland Cavaliers visiting Charlotte to take on the Hornets at 6 o'clock. The Celtics and Pistons, remember that rivalry back when we were kids, Lakeena? How times have changed. That's also is going down at 6 o'clock. Of course, Bulls Pacers at the same time. At 6:30, the Hawks will travel to Toronto to take on the Raptors. 7:30, Houston at San Antonio. At 8 o'clock, the aforementioned Brooklyn Nets, they'll pay a visit to the injured Utah Jazz. At 8 o'clock, New Orleans at Denver to take on the Nuggets. At 9 o'clock on ESPN, Philadelphia at Dallas to take on the Mavericks. The Mavericks trying to bounce back for a bad loss on Wednesday against OKC in overtime. Luka had a triple-double in that game, but
wasted
that was ugly.
Performance. Yeah, if you saw the performance, they wasted. Dort kind of led the way there. Dort took over in that overtime, so that's why they were able to fall.
Yeah, and the Thunder and the Blazers will wrap up tonight's schedule at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, on Saturday, you got the start time here at 4 o'clock. I think this was a makeup game. I think that's why for the early start time, Memphis and Orlando. That should be a fun one. Miami coming off a big win against San Antonio. They needed that win desperately too after losing earlier this week to Boston. So they really needed that win last a couple of nights ago. But they'll go to Charlotte to continue their road trip, and Phoenix continue their East Coast road trip. They'll play Washington. And the ABC game of the week at 7:30 our time. You got the Knicks and the Lakers both for having their struggles. We'll see if there's no more yet if LeBron's going to be back for that game. Hopefully he can't because they really need him. Milwaukee and Portland. I know Milwaukee's kind of had their struggles too. Portland, is trying to keep things afloat with Dame out. He'll be out for a while. And OKC and Sacramento. I know Sacramento's been having some issues. And such, OKC, like I said,
they got blown out by the Warriors last night.
I saw that. It was just not terrible. I think things are kind of coming to a head in Sacramento. Don't be surprised if you see some of their guys get traded, or at the very least, the subject of trade rumors against OKC at 9 o'clock on Saturday tomorrow.
Yep. Wrapping up the weekend schedule, let's go to Sunday. Of course, the 76ers will travel here to Chicago to take on the Bulls at 2:30. At 2:30 on Sunday, the Pistons go to Minnesota to take on a surprising Timberwolves. They're right in the playoff mix in the West. At 2:30 on NBA TV is Brooklyn at Denver. This should be exciting, especially if you get James Harden and Kyrie Irving back. If you get Jokic back on the flip side for Denver, he didn't play on Wednesday in their loss to Utah. At 5 o'clock, the Pacers will travel to Cleveland to take on the Cavaliers. At the same time, Boston at Orlando. At 5 o'clock on Sunday night on ESPN, we have Atlanta at Dallas. That should be a fun one. Luka versus Trae Young. At 6 o'clock, New Orleans at Houston. NBA TV will wrap up the Sunday night schedule with Milwaukee at the LA Clippers.
What's kind of caught your attention in your lineup so far in the NBA real quick before we go to break?
Washington's upset win at Philadelphia on Wednesday. They beat Philadelphia by 4. Joel Embiid, as I mentioned on our last show, he's having a very good year. I know he was out early in the season because of COVID, but he's really picked it up. Lakeena, you mentioned Milwaukee. This regular season is about them getting healthy. They're going to win enough games, and they're preparing for the playoffs. So I'm not too much worried about them. You mentioned the Knicks and their struggles. You may have some players become available by this time next week. As far as the trade deadline is concerned, we'll see about that. But as I said before, regarding to the Chicago Bulls, if they can keep their play at or slightly above 500, they're going to be okay. Do I see Philadelphia run away with the East? No. Do I see Boston? No. Do I see Milwaukee? No. Philadelphia? No. What's the other team? Miami? They're playing good right now. Do I see them run away with it? No. Cleveland, they've been a surprise team in the league this year. Do I see them going on a magical run? No. So if you're the Bulls, you're okay. Just play your game and hold down the fort for the rest of this month, and hopefully you get Caruso and Lonzo Ball back, hopefully without any setbacks, and you should be ready to set up shop to take over the Eastern Conference just in time for the playoffs.
There are 3 games that are separating between first, the top seed and the sixth seed, which is Brooklyn. Of course, the Bulls have the percentage points, weird, tiebreaker thing. I don't know. Don't ask us how that works, but that's why the Bulls are right now the 1 seed. Of course, you got Miami, the Sixers, the Bucks, the Cavs. I don't know if the Cavs are going to hang on. I don't see it happening. And then you get the Nets, and their issues, 6 losses in a row. They got Toronto, they're getting hot. The Hornets are up and down. You got Boston. You don't know what to get from them. And also to Atlanta. Those are your top 10 right now. And as far as the Western Conference is concerned, of course, Phoenix, of course, the Warriors, even though despite winning 8 in a row, the Suns have been playing pretty well themselves. They're still number 1. I know that's sort of hard to believe for some people, but the Suns are the number 1 seed in the West right now. The Warriors are 2 games back, despite of their great run. The Grizz are still 6.5 back. The Jazz are even further back than that with all their injury issues at 10.5 back. They got the Mavs, they got the Nuggets. Those are your top 6. Then the 7 through 10, these teams will be playing in the play-in tournament if the season ended today. The T-Wolves, the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Trailblazers. So I don't see. Maybe the Pelicans are probably trying to make a run for those last those last couple of spots, maybe. But if you're the Lakers and the Clippers, the Clippers are just hoping that you can stay there until PG can come back, and maybe perhaps hopefully Kawhi can come back at some point. The Lakers, I don't know what else. What can they do? Because like you said, they don't really have anything to trade for. So I don't know.
Real quickly, Keenan, before we break for the top of the hour, did you hear this story about Jerry West? I believe he's still consulting with the Los Angeles Clippers right now.
Yes.
He got his season tickets from the Lakers Revolt. Yeah. And there's been all this constant stories about him and his fractured relationship with the franchise who he helped build up as an executive through the 90s in the early 2000s. That thing is ugly. And we know that the Lakers organization, we know Jeannie Buss is the head of that organization now. She had to take that organization away from her brother after the late Dr. Jerry Buss, their father, died a few years ago. That thing is just a mess. And regarding this current roster right now, as we said before, Lakeena, LeBron James, you brought him in to cover up what's going on in the front office and to curb the losing that has been going on previous for the last 5-6 years. And when you hand over the keys of the franchise to a type of player and a personality like LeBron, this is what happens. They're lucky they got that championship a couple of years ago. It looks like they're not going to get any more, especially if he continues to get hurt like this.
Yeah, his age, unfortunately, is starting to show for LeBron. And yeah, so I saw that story and I heard about it. And it's just sort of like, wow. I mean, I know he and Jerry Buss had a great relationship. I mean, his relationship with the kids, not so much. And I know that they got into it with the son. And, I think that's when, things started the relationship started fractured with the Lakers. And now he got his tickets revoked. But he was one of the reasons why, the Lakers got on the map when it got to Los Angeles. So, for them to treat him, that way, I think is just, unfortunate. And yeah, this is sort of like, we hopefully maybe get somebody on to talk about it, because this could kind of go like way over my head.
Stay tuned for more sports and more fun as Second City Sports continues with our friend of the show, Kaitlin Sharkey from Fox 32 Sports Chicago. She's going to hop on with us to talk Bears, Bulls, and a whole lot more. In the bottom of the hour, our good friend Christine Manika from KXRB in Sioux Falls will join us to give us her weekly commentary from the world of sports. You're listening to Second City Sports. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. NBA tonight, the Bulls take on the Raptors. Chicago, a half game out of first place in the East, 29-17 overall. Struggling lately, they've dropped 7 of 10. The Raptors coming off a win. They're 6 games out of first, a game over 500, 23-22. Last night, they beat the Hornets 125-113 in Toronto. Tonight's matchup at United Center scheduled for a 7 o'clock tip-off. The Blackhawks are winless in 4 on the road tonight, visiting the Red Wings, 6:30 Central puck drop. The Hawks coming off a 2-0 shutout at Colorado on Monday night. Goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury reportedly receiving interest from the Washington Capitals as the trade deadline approaches. College basketball last night, big upset for number 24 Illinois, 56-55 over number 10 Michigan State. Loyola Chicago beat SIU 59-47. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Deep breaths.
Mi's virtual meditation studio has never been busier.
Imagine not working.
They need a remote assistant to realign their scheduling.
Blank calendar. Sorry, back to your breath.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Make calls, schedule virtual interviews, and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, this is Discover, and we take customer service very seriously. We know that if you have a question or concern about your credit card, that's a serious matter, and you need to talk to a real person about it. So we offer around-the-clock access to seriously talented representatives in the USA. Again, it's a serious endeavor. The only funny thing about it is Bob. If you call us and Bob answers, you're in for a treat. Get 100% US-based customer service and talk to a real person day or night. Discover. Exceptionally common sense.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
If you have a question or comment for our guest that's coming up, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. We bring on our next guest. She's a friend of the show. She's been on our podcast before, but she's making her debut since we switched to doing live shows right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Quick tidbit for you. Her hometown is home to the defending NBA world champion Milwaukee Bucks, and she covered the Packers and the Brewers as well during her 6 years in the great state of Wisconsin. Now she covers your teams for Fox Sports Chicago with the Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox, and everything else in between Chicago sports. Let's please welcome in our good friend, Miss Kaitlin Sharkey. Kaitlin, welcome back to the show. How are you? If we can get
What's
her
up, guys?
There we go.
Good.
There we go.
Good to see you both and good to talk to you both. It's been a minute, but I'm happy to be back with you guys.
Yes,
Same
we're glad
here.
to. Yeah, we're glad to have you on. We know that you're a busy lady, but we're glad to have you back. But it's been almost a year, but who cares? We have you right now. So
Yes.
let's get to the Chicago Bears. Of course, they had their press conference earlier this week, introducing new head coach Matt Eberflus and new GM Ryan Poles. Some people said they won the press conference. Some people say, well, they still have a long way to go. What was your take on the press conference this past week?
I am someone that doesn't believe in winning. I mean, I do feel like you can lose a press conference, as we maybe saw with the Blackhawks a
Right.
couple days ago. So you can lose press conferences, but I don't think they necessarily, I don't believe in winning them. I think it's something that, you just kind of go out there, get general ideas, general philosophies. I don't know if we learned a ton of in-depth things at that press conference, and I don't think that's the whole point either. It's kind of just to introduce, but I left the press conference being impressed with Ryan Poles. I think he's kind of this new age, new football guy who's going to take this opportunity as a first-time GM and really run with it. And I feel like he's going to blend kind of old school football, new school football, and I think that's going to do some really good things for the Bears. Matt Eberflus, it's one of those things where the whole kind of hiring process, people are like, who should they hire? Who should they hire? I am someone that believes like I have no business saying who they should hire because I am not in the business of evaluating head coaches. But I think, he's obviously passionate about coaching, and it'll be interesting to see, but it is way too soon to tell how it's all going to play out. But I think it's fun to see him assemble his staff now, bring Luke Getsy from Green Bay over as the offensive coordinator. It'll be interesting to see how Luke handles that with not having a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, to see what kind of coordinator he really is. Obviously, I'm sure that made him look pretty good for a number of years, but it's exciting stuff. And I think all in all, it's just change, and that's what everybody wanted. So now we'll see how it kind of plays out on the field.
Do you think this team can contend next year, or do you think they're gonna have to maybe do a few like changes, maybe like trade like maybe a Khalil Mack or somebody like that? I know they definitely need a line help. Where do you think the direction the Bears will go, during this offseason?
I think there's gonna be a lot of changes. I mean, I remember at the end of last season, I was going through the roster and thinking like, wow, this person will be gone, this person will likely be gone, this guy will be gone. There is a number of changes. They're not like in a cap nightmare situation, but understanding that they had some of these deals where it wasn't like a long-term thing. The quarterback room is going to look obviously very different outside of Justin Fields, but the defense outside of Roquan Smith and some of the younger guys and Travis Gibson and those guys coming up, it's going to look totally different. And I think whether or not they can compete in the division especially will depend on who they value in bringing back and maybe what free agents they can get, because right now they're in a tough situation. They have some tough decisions to make it, but I think a lot of people are concerned about the offense, and I still feel like they still are missing some pieces to get to where they want to be.
Good friend of the show, Kaitlin Sharkey from Fox 32 Chicago Sports, is joining us right here on the Friday edition of Second City Sports, live in 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid, Lakeena here with you. Kaitlin, going back to new head coach Matt Eberflus, we talked about this on the show before, Lakeena, that not too many people have talked about this, but this team under Matt Nagy was very undisciplined with the stupid penalties, the false starts. And it was just very inexcusable. Yeah. But Matt Eberflus pointed out at the press conference earlier this week that he's very disciplined, he's very detailed. And you saw that when he was defensive coordinating the Indianapolis Colts, they were the top 5 defenses in the league the last 2 years. Talk to us about how he's going to bring accountability to this franchise, which they so desperately need.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we constantly heard that word from, after these losses, we would hear the coaches speak or the players speak about accountability, but you never really believed it. You're like, okay, I know that you're supposed to be held accountable for these mistakes and these penalties and these miscommunication issues, but you never really saw anything change. So it'll be interesting to see with the players that are remaining, because then you look at like where was the accountability falling on some of those vets that are now going to be walking out the door, or is it going to be on some of these younger guys who are kind of learning what it means to be accountable in the league, right? Like it's one thing to make these mistakes and kind of chalk it up to, well, this was this and this is this, and we heard a lot of that, I feel like, in post-game interviews last year with the Bears. So Matt Eberflus gave me that like you rah like coach speak, like we're gonna hold them accountable, and that's all great. And he can tell them to run all he wants and all of those things, and those are good things to have. But until you actually see it played out and you see these players, because I just remember Roquan Smith after games saying like we need to look in the mirror and hold each other accountable, and then it's like 3 more losses came after that, and you're kind of with the same issues. So I think like people like to think it's a quick fix, but it's going to depend on who's in that locker room when the season starts.
That's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Now, let's go to the NBA hardware for a second there, Kaitlin. The Bulls, of course, they got the number 1 seed right now by a few, percentage points. We won't get into the weird, tiebreakers against, over the Heat right now. But where do you think the ceiling is for the Bulls? I mean, the injuries. I know Caruso and Ball, they're still out. So do you think, can they stay at the top of the East, though, you think?
And they're in a tough situation, and I feel like this All-Star break, so anything, not that I don't pay attention to anything before the All-Star break, but I feel like we learn a lot about NBA teams once the All-Star break comes in the second half of the season. That's when you can kind of really get a sense of what these teams are. And obviously the Bulls have dealt with a number of injuries, a number of COVID issues. Now Zach LaVine's playing through a hurt back. That's not what you want to hear from one of your superstars. So I think they're a good team. I think they play well together. I think Ayo Dosunmu is having an incredible season, and it's so fun to watch. But I don't think they're going to stay at that top spot. I think they'll make the playoffs, but there's some tough competition in the East, and we kind of saw them falter and get blown out against the really good teams, where when people are like they're really trying hard, and those teams aren't even trying yet. I don't buy into that part of it, but I think if they stay at this level of health or lack thereof, it's gonna be a tough second half.
What do you think that Arturas Karnisovas and Gianmarco Eversley, what do you think they're going to do at the February 10th trade deadline? Do you think they're going to get an interior guy to come and control the paint? Do you think they need another scorer? What do you think they'll do on February 10th?
I think they need some, rim protection, and controlling the paint certainly is something that they're missing. I think they have great scorers, and that's something that's great to see from a guy like Ayo Dosunmu, or between the combination of DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine and Vucevic last night even, they have the scorers, they have those positions covered, I feel like, but they need some help in the paint. They need some help in the rim protection part of the game, and maybe they'll go out. You just kind of wonder who are they going to get? What do they have to give up? Is it worth it? Do you mess with the gel of the team at this point? And this is a situation where I feel like NBA front offices at this point in the season are faced with a lot of tough decisions, because basketball is the kind of game where you throw in a free agent who in your mind can help with these things, but all of a sudden it doesn't flow with the lineup. It doesn't flow with the rest of the team. Now what have you done, right? It's a very tricky situation to be in. So it's a matter of how much the Bulls front office trusts the group that they have right now, or if they feel that it's worth taking that chance and bringing someone in to help.
DeMar DeRozan, you just mentioned, Kaitlin, has been amazing. He's chilling with the team. He went, down to Champaign for Ayo's jersey retirement a few weeks back. We heard all the time, well, this would be a good fit. He and Zach won't get along and blah, blah, blah. What expectations did you have for DeRozan being here, and has he exceeded them for you?
I think so. I was one of those people that I've been a fan of DeMar DeRozan, and I know what he was capable of because I was on the other side when the Raptors were beating the crap out of the Bucks a couple years ago. And so I had like flashbacks of DeMar DeRozan, even Fred VanVleet, like dropping 3-pointers. So like when I heard about the move to get DeMar, I was like, oh, this is a good addition. And I think now people are kind of seeing with the right fit what he's capable of. And I think he's just a stand-up teammate. He's a stand-up player. And the fact that he's supporting Ayo Dosunmu in that night, and like even in his rookie season, and you saw him congratulating VanVleet yesterday in Toronto about his All-Star announcement, like that just shows what kind of player DeMar DeRozan is. And it's more rare in the NBA than we probably even realize to see that kind of attitude and team mentality that he holds. And I think that's one of the reasons he's successful. So I love the move, and it's easy to say that now because he's playing so well, but I knew his potential was there, and I knew what he was capable of.
Staying with the Bulls, Kaitlin, of course, head coach Billy Donovan is known as a defensive coach, and he gets the best out of his guys. Of course, AK and Mark Eversley, their big move last year was bringing in Nikolai Vucevic. But I'll go with my question about Billy Donovan. Dealing with the situation with COVID and with the injuries thus far this year, what grade would you give Billy Donovan?
I think he's doing a heck of a job, and I think it's the whole COVID part of it aside, and that's a lot of an undertaking. I mean, I remember listening to one of his press conferences a couple months ago even, and he was like, I don't even know who's available. I don't know what my team's going to look like. So given like that's the circumstance and situation that they were dealing with, but yet he still coached up the players that were available, held them accountable, speaking about accountability, and you can tell that he's going to take what he has that night and bring out the best of those players. So I think he's done a heck of a job. You hope they can stay in first place so he can coach in the All-Star game. But I think it was a great fit and a great move. And hopefully they can continue to, kind of right the ship right now, because I feel like they're kind of teetering a little bit.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on that. let's go to the college hardware for a second. And speaking of, Iowa's, former, alma mater, Illinois, Kofi Cockburn was big in that upset win again. Well, not, I wouldn't say it's upset, but, they're kind of pretty even right now against Wisconsin.
You're going to make Kaitlin
sometimes
cry
it
right
would-
now. Don't do it.
I know.
I didn't go to that Wisconsin team.
Well, I'll say she didn't go to that Wisconsin. Remember, she went to Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Yes, exactly.
Totally different Wisconsin school. But what do you think can this Illinois team go far in the tournament? I know they've shown some flashes. They've had a couple of bad losses early in the season here and there. But what do you think? Can they kind of compete not only in the Big Ten but also maybe perhaps for maybe not a championship per se, but go far in the tournament?
I hope so. I mean, at least they know what it's like to be there, and those players that are Kofi Cockburn, Curbelo, like they know what that atmosphere is like and how to what it takes to compete in a tournament to even get to the tournament. So I think their win over Wisconsin was a big one in showing like we don't care what you're ranked, we don't care where you're standing right now. And I think that's one of the beauties of college basketball, because you like to say that it's really anyone's tournament, especially when you get into the tournament. But I hope so. I have high hopes for them. I think even just the confidence in the kind of evolution of Kofi Cockburn, we didn't really see that, because when you have a superstar like Ayo Dosunmu front and center for your team, you kind of you're not paying attention as closely to the mentality and the style of Kofi Cockburn. But now we're seeing it, and it was so fun to watch the other night, him, stack up a huge stat line and continue to do that. So I think they have the pieces. It'll just be a matter of that they can all stay healthy and, get hot at the right time, which we know is the key when it comes to March Madness.
Kaitlin Sharkey of Fox 32 Sports here in Chicago is joining us right here on Second City Sports on the Friday edition. We're live and in living color. Sid, Lakeena here with you. Kaitlin, let's go back to football. As I mentioned at the top of this hour, that you covered the Green Bay Packers for 6 years before you moved to Chicago. You covered the Packers. Of course, they ended their season in heartbreak with the last second loss to the 49ers. I predicted on this show that Aaron Rodgers will be playing his last year in the Green Bay Packers uniform. I'm still going to stick to my prediction. Of course, the Packers are $45 million, I believe, in the hole in terms of the salary cap space.
Yep.
They may or may not tag wide receiver Devontae Adams. Where do you see Aaron Rodgers playing next year?
Whew, well, now I feel like he's officially not going to retire, because he's not going to share the same spotlight or class with Tom Brady. He wants it all by himself. So I think, okay, so now you're like, okay, well, he's not going to retire. So where's he going to go? I'd be lying if I had any idea. I don't think he's going to come back to Green Bay. If he does, the cap situation, that's my reasoning behind why, when people are like, why would he not? It's not anything personal. I don't think it's like anything bigger than the fact of how are they going to keep the pieces they want to keep for him, to convince him that, okay, we're not rebuilding, we're not reloading, we're going all in again. And I don't know, this loss to the 49ers was one that like kind of sucked the life out of maybe this idea that they're close. It should have been their year, right? They should have won that game. And now you start looking at things differently. Like maybe they don't have the pieces. Maybe they need to adjust. What's that going to look like for Aaron Rodgers? So, and I do not think that Devontae Adams deserves just a franchise tag and they'll say like, we fixed like this man should get, I know he's asking, well, there's reports that he's asking $30 million a year. I don't know if he's going to get that money, but he deserves, a big contract. He's one of the best wide receivers in the game. So they have a lot of tough decisions. And I don't think that Aaron is going to kind of sit around and, maybe this will work out, maybe it's not. But to think about him with another team, is the grass always greener, right? So it's like you give up what you know and what you know that you have more control of, versus now you go to a team that they're like, whoa, no, we call the shots. This is what we're going to do. Either you fit into it or you don't, and you learn a new offense. So I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to figure out where he goes.
Hopefully we won't get a repeat of what we saw last year and all that drama, but that's
I hope not. Yeah.
I hope not.
I know my colleagues there are hoping that's not the case either.
I know. I'm sure. The Blackhawks. Oh God. I mean, I don't. Sid. I mean, Kaitlin. I honestly don't know where to go with this because we all saw the video of what happened. Rocky Words, kind of got on, kind of, I don't want to say maybe it was a tirade, with that whole thing with the situation with Kyle Beach. Now there's a little lawsuit coming out. There are 3 more victims, accusing the Hawks of kind of doing the same thing. They're kind of getting to the point where they're becoming an afterthought here in Chicago. I mean, they had their championships and such. You saw Wayne Gretzky eviscerate them, probably worse than they did when he scored 18 points against the Blackhawks in the 85 conference finals. You remember that, Sid? But what do you think about the Hawks situation? I mean, they're kind of becoming a footnote right now, Kaitlin.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate for them, but sometimes it's not me saying like you get what you deserve, but sometimes people have to be put in situations where they're kind of called out for like this isn't okay, and this lack of change or this lack of perspective, or eventually they say what's done in the dark is going to come to light. Well, sometimes that the world has a weird way of kind of working itself out, and you feel for the players that are out there frustrated that the team is not performing the way they wanted to, but it kind of felt just off from the start of the season. So it's not like they're doing anything that we're like, oh, we're surprised that they're losing all these games. Well, for a couple months now, we're like, they accepted like this is Blackhawks hockey right now, and it's not a good thing, but I feel like they just have so much going on. They have a lot to figure out, and it's kind of some soul searching moments for them. And even doing highlights or like talking about them as they head into the break, I said something last night on air like they take the next week off, and I'm like, are we going to notice, right? Like it's one of those things where it's like the Bulls are playing for things, there's all these new exciting moves with the Bears, there's other tickets in town. So I think they have some soul searching to do and to figure out which direction they want this franchise to go from here on out, because you don't want the slippery slope of irrelevance, in sports. It happens fast and pretty soon, no one's coming to games, no one's buying your gear, no one, and fans are what keeps these teams up and running. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle all of this.
We're heading down the home stretch with Kaitlin Sharkey, good friend of the show from Fox 32 Chicago Sports, right here on the Friday edition of Second City Sports. Sid, Lakeena with you right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Kaitlin, let's go back to football. Of course, Cincinnati and Los Angeles Rams will play for the NFL Championship next Sunday night from Los Angeles. But I know you have one perspective when you're actually covering the games. You're there in the press box. You had to look at things differently. But as a fan outside of Wild Card Weekend, this has been the best stretch of playoffs maybe ever. Give us your thoughts about the playoff action that you've witnessed so far as a fan.
It's been a blast, and yes, I wish I was covering those games, but it's also been fun to relax and enjoy them and watch great football. And you kind of take a break from the Bears season, you step back, you're like, oh, this is what it should look like every single
It should be happening here.
Right.
Like, oh, this is exciting. I'm like, these are really good teams. So it's been great playoff action. I'm actually going to miss it this Sunday, like not having an exciting game to watch because it's been so great. But the Bengals and the Rams, 2 very likable teams.
Oh, you don't care about the Pro Bowl?
No,
don't tell anyone.
We all say don't. We won't tell anybody.
I'm excited that Jakeem Grant and Robert Quinn are representing for Chicago there. But yeah, I think they're 2 likable teams, and Matthew Stafford and Joe Burrow. I mean, it's just kind of the storylines write themselves, and it's exciting to watch. And it's one of the things where like people are like, who do you like? Who do you want to win? And I'm like, I never really have this sense of like, I don't care because I like them both. But this year, yeah, I mean, I think it's incredible what Cincinnati has done and how they've turned things around, which should give Bears fans and other teams in similar situations hope that like, it may seem like we're, years away from being in the big game, but Joe Burrow in Cincinnati is saying not so much. So it's been a great run. I'll be sad when it ends. I always feel that way. I'm like, oh, now what?
Yeah, we all feel that way. Cubs and White Sox baseball. I mean, they're in a lockout. The owners want to bring in a mediator. They're supposed to be starting spring training. Next week. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Do you think we'll miss any games? And do you think the Cubs and the White Sox there will be spring training in? And if so, what do you think they'll start? Will we miss any games? Like that's the important question.
I mean, they're inching close to that point. I think if this goes on, in the next couple of weeks, well, yeah, you're pushing everything back. It's talking about slippery slopes of irrelevancy. Baseball doesn't want to play with this. And this is the part that kind of to me is so hard to like wrap my head around, because it's like, you don't want to be out of this. You don't want this to be your spotlight. You don't want this the reason why people are talking about baseball, when, you know, the NFL and the NBA are taking all these numbers and ratings, and then you don't want people to forget, not that people are going to forget about baseball, but out of sight, out of mind goes so far. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how they get their act together, and quickly, because I mean, people, this is our hope, especially of these people that live in the Midwest where it's cold. We're like, I need something. I need baseball.
Yeah,
I need to
right.
hear like the crack of the bat. I need to see them at spring training. Even if I'm not there, it makes me feel like, all right, we're almost out of this winter. And when you don't have that, I don't know about you guys, but like, I feel like, oh my God, winter's never going to end because we're not talking about baseball.
Yes, yes, you know, Kayla, I'm a White Sox fan. We have a team that could possibly win the World
compete,
Series.
yep.
I remember
Right.
1994. I'm not going to break my computer, so I'm going to leave that alone. But, you know, winning the
I've heard
division.
that one. That's been brought up a lot to me in the last couple of weeks. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is the
Yeah.
Sox year and it's going to be blown out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
But, you know, we won a division last year. Of course, this year have higher expectations. If they start the season late or, you know, missing any regular season games, that's going to be disappointing. But I'm still hopeful, but they're not going to miss any regular season games. They probably miss a week or two of spring training, which is still important, but I don't think they'll miss any regular season games. So I'll leave it at that. We'll see what happens. Last moment or two with our good friend Kaitlin Sharkey of Fox 32 Sports in Chicago, right here on Second City Sports, the Friday edition, live and in living color. Sid, Lakeena here with you. Kaitlin, one more issue about football. Of course, Brian Flores, now ex-head coach of the Miami Dolphins, he filed a lawsuit against the NFL, the New York Football Giants, Denver, and a couple others, I'm sure. I mentioned the Dolphins earlier this week. Of course, we broke down the situations earlier in the show. Do you think the NFL will ever get it right in terms of hiring minority of black head coaches? Do you think that this lawsuit will produce to any change? Me personally, I don't think so. But what do you think about all this? I think it's a whole lot missing in this story. We just scratching the surface right now.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I feel like the speed at which the statements were released by the teams and the league, and it was kind of like, well, how do we all know, like, what is missing? So I agree with you, Sid. I still feel like they're far ways away, and that hurts my heart and my soul, because it shouldn't be that way. But I don't think something like this will. I mean, not that it's the same thing, but even look what's going on in Washington and all of those.
Yeah.
You know, it's like nothing still has changed. They're still rolling. Here's our new uniforms. Here's our new name. Like, ignore what's going on behind the curtain. And I think that's what we're seeing here, so to speak. It's going to be newsworthy, and it should be, and it's going to be talked about quite a bit. But will it actually make a difference? And, you know, I saw, you know, these head coaching spots are being filled up, and I'm going down the list, and I'm like, well, that doesn't look like any change to me. So the excuses will continue to come. The reasonings will continue to come. And if they want to think that, you know, end zone painting and helmet decals are enough, that's what they're going to do. And it's unfortunate, and it's heartbreaking, but you hope that someone eventually gets it right.
Hopefully, you know, if you have you know, kind of like a formula to fix it, you know, please tell us, because
Right.
like I said earlier, like I don't know, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I don't have anything. Last question from me, Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, how serious were there any initial talks, you know, with him perhaps coming to the Bears? Of course, now he's telling Michigan fans, "Oh, I'm here, you know, where I want to be." What do you think, Kaitlin?
I saw a tweet that that Michigan, it was this girl that like quote tweeted the tweet, and it was like, Michigan was like, we're back, he's with us, basically. And the girl was like, he broke up with you guys, he was going to break up with you guys. And that's exactly what it felt like. Like, he just didn't find anything better at night when he went out. Like, you know, he's just like, oh, I want to go back.
That's
like,
good.
that's what it reminded me of. But I mean, George McCaskey said that would not comment if they talked to Jim Harbaugh or not. Obviously, I don't think they did, because we would have heard about it in some respects. So, I mean, I'm sure there was serious interest with him and the Vikings, but the way that he was just like, I'm going to go back. And then everyone's like, well, all right. Like, I don't know. It just put Michigan in a bind for sure, which was interesting. But who knows when we'll see him back in the NFL. But there's obviously a lot of interest there. But I just thought it was funny. Like, the social media reactions keep us going, guys, because sometimes it just feels so heavy, and you just have to remind yourself, like, it's sports. Like, you can laugh about it. Like, we're talking about football. And I appreciate those moments that people just have the most hilarious tweets and can make me laugh about how Michigan is like the girlfriend he was going to break up with decided to go back to.
Go back to your wife. No.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how it felt like. It's crazy.
Last question from me, Kaitlin. We like to end our questions with a fun question, especially with you, because you get us. You get us. Many people do, but you're one of the first people that gets us. Mine is a two-parter. If my memory serves, on the last time we had you on, you said you played soccer growing up, correct?
Volleyball and basketball.
Okay.
I had like a very short-lived soccer career because once I figured out you had to run, I was out.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
But with that being said, of course, many athletes have their game day routines and superstitions and things along that line. What type of music you like listening to get yourself pumped up? Did you have any weird superstition or any type of music that get you psyched up to get ready to go play?
When I would get my like ankles taped up and I would put my like pre-wrap in my hair and my messy bun, like it was always hip hop. Even now, like if I'm going to do something like any kind of cardio, like Meek Mill Dreams and Nightmares will forever be the one pump up song that it just has always been that way. But not too many superstitions, but always had to have the like strip of pre-wrap in my hair, even though the trainers would yell at me and tell me it's for like the ankles and taping. I'd be like, it holds my hair back perfectly. And that was the thing I always had to have in my hair. Otherwise I felt like off. I couldn't play my best game if I didn't have that in my hair.
We love it. The rebel Sharkey. Rebel Sharkey.
Yes, we love that.
My second part of my last question from me. We see these athletes now. We see it before every game. They come in dressed sharply. Some others dressed outrageously. And Joe Burrow had this gold chain before last Sunday's AFC Championship game. I wanted to ask you, what would be your wardrobe? What would be your style? Would you go with the Joe Burrow kind of chain, or would you dress like Russell Westbrook? Kind of give us your style. How would you enter the arena?
I wouldn't be that eccentric. I would do the more like classic, like I'm trying to think, like the Tom Brady, like, nice suit, like put, it all matches nicely. Even Russell Wilson. I'm not like, I don't think I'd go with the Cam Newton or like the Russell Westbrook. Like, that's not my style. But if I could wear a chain, it would be like a cool, like blinged out shark. I think that's the kind of.
I was thinking about that this morning. Yes.
Yes.
I'm like, I think I need one of those.
I can see that.
You should trademark that.
Yeah. I can see a bit, if not the San Jose shark, just a big old shark with a big old teeth. Like,
right.
I can see that.
I like that. That's the
but only when it, like Joe Burrow said, only when I make enough money where it's all real. Then I'm not doing it before I can't afford it. You gotta bling it out if you're gonna wear a shark around your neck.
Of course. Gotta be practical too. Gotta be very practical.
Exactly.
All right, folks.
So much fun.
Yeah, this has been Kaitlin Sharkey for our Sports Zone Chicago audience. Kaitlin Sharkey from Fox 32 Chicago Sports. You can follow her on social media at K Rose Sharkey. Once again, the letter K Rose Sharkey on Twitter and Instagram. Kaitlin, thank you very much for joining us today, taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Pleasure.
Great job. Yeah, great job as always. Much continued success. And I know you're a busy lady, but we promise hopefully we can't wait too much longer to have you back on this program again.
Yes,
absolutely.
We'll slow down a little bit, so I have a little bit more time on my hands. So I'd love to join you guys. Always so much fun, and I appreciate you having me on.
All right, thank you very much, Kaitlin, for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Once again, that's Kaitlin Sharkey of Fox 32 Chicago Sports. She's always fun with us. She's always great with her time joining us here on Second City Sports. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. We'll be right back to wrap up the last half hour of the show. After this, you're listening to Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago. NBA tonight, the Bulls take on the Raptors. Chicago, a half game out of first place in the East, 29-17 overall. Struggling lately, they've dropped 7 of 10. The Raptors coming off a win. They're 6 games out of first, a game over 500, 23-22. Last night, they beat the Hornets 125-113 in Toronto. Tonight's matchup at United Center scheduled for a 7 o'clock tip-off. The Blackhawks are winless in 4 on the road tonight, visiting the Red Wings, 6:30 Central puck drop. The Hawks coming off a 2-0 shutout at Colorado on Monday night. Goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury reportedly receiving interest interest from the Washington Capitals as the trade deadline approaches. College basketball last night, big upset for number 24 Illinois, 56-55 over number 10 Michigan State. Loyola Chicago beat SIU 59-47. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Deep breaths.
Mi's virtual meditation studio has never been busier.
Imagine not working.
They need a remote assistant to realign their scheduling.
Blank calendar. Sorry, back to your breath.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Make calls, schedule virtual interviews, and talk to candidates right from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, this is Discover, and we take customer service very seriously. We know that if you have a question or concern about your credit card, that's a serious matter, and you need to talk to a real person about it. So we offer around-the-clock access to seriously talented representatives in the USA. Again, it's a serious endeavor. The only funny thing about it is Bob. If you call us and Bob answers, you're in for a treat. Get 100% US-based customer service and talk to a real person day or night. Discover. Exceptionally common sense.
Welcome back to Second City Sports live and in living color on a Friday edition right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown. Hey, that's me. This is the last segment of the show for the weekend for the day. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
Yvonne Lakeena McGee on the Twitter and Lakeena_McGee on the IG.
Normally at this time, our good friend Christine Manika from KXRB will be joining us, but she has the week off. She'll be, hopefully she'll be back with us next week as we preview the Super Bowl between the Rams and the Bengals. Lakeena, we meant to do this last hour, but we have a little bit more time. Let's go back to the best and worst in the week that was in college basketball. I'll start off with Wednesday's action. I watched the majority of this game via my television. It was the Fighting Illini, who are ranked number 18 in the country. They defeated number 11 Wisconsin 80-67. Kofi Coburn, as you mentioned, Lakeena, during our interview with Miss Kaitlin Sharkey, he had a career high of 37 points. As Illinois' game plan is to feed the beast, and they did that. As I mentioned, Coburn finished with 37 points off of 6 of 19 shooting. Granderson had 14 points off of 5 of 9 shooting, including 3 of 6 from downtown. Trent Frazier struggled shooting from the outside, but he still ended up with 7 points and 7 assists. My guy, Alfonso Plummer, he struggled big time with 6 points off of 1 of 7 shooting, including 1 of 6 from 3-point range. But Lakeena, Aaron Cabello made the difference coming off the bench for the Illini. Of course, he's been missing due to concussion protocols all season long. He chipped in with 7 points off the bench in 11 minutes of action. Lakeena, I'm not saying this team is going to go to the Final Four. I still need to see more, but this team is more focused now than it's ever been. The only problem that I have, I know this is the game plan for all levels of basketball, high school, college, and the pros, but Illinois takes too many 3-point shots from me. It almost got away with them. It got away from them in the second half. Of course, Wisconsin was 0 for 9 in the first half shooting from 3-point range. I know it went to 0 for 10, 0 for 11 before they hit their first 3-point shot. But this Illini team is rolling right now. They had a tough win at Northwestern last Saturday, but they came back and dominated Wisconsin in the second half down in Champaign.
Yeah, I think Coburn definitely kind of led the charge there with 37 for the Illini. And like you said, Wisconsin's one of those teams where they kind of live and die by 3, and it killed them, early on. They couldn't get their threes together. Like you said, they're like 0 for 11 or 12 before they hit their first 3, and then they end up finishing like 3 for 24 from 3. So that's what killed them. Of course, Johnny Davis, I should say, had 22 points. He was one of the few guys in double figures, one of only 2 guys in double figures for the Badgers. Now, thankfully Coburn had 37 because, he was really the only one that scored. I mean, Granderson had 14. Like I said, for Frazier struggled. And, thank goodness for Coburn. I mean, I was talking to another one of our favorites, away for rival, who's an Illinois grad. He said, I can't imagine, this imagine, he should be, Coburn should be, right there in the thick of it for Player of the Year honors, not just Big Ten, but nationally. And I think he's right. But just imagine if he had not been there. So he decided not to come back or decided to transfer Kentucky like it was rumored, for a few months before in the offseason. So I think he's definitely kept his team afloat. We'll see what happens. They got a tough schedule. They got a tough next couple of games coming up. So we'll see where Illinois is. But yeah, I mean, a nice big win for them against Wisconsin.
Yeah, they're the outright leaders in the Big Ten as of this broadcast. They are 9-2 in Big Ten action, leading Wisconsin and Michigan State. Sticking with Wednesday's action, Lakeena in the Big Ten, Purdue, number 4 ranked team in the country. I think they have a prime chance to get into the Final Four. They take care of Minnesota on the road, 88-73.
Nice big win for Purdue. Pulled away late for Minnesota. Jaden Ivey, of course. We talked about him last week against that buzzer beater earlier this week. On Sunday against Ohio State. But yeah, 21 points. He led the way there. And look, Purdue's sort of been up and down. They're kind of like they're sort of like right there. Like I think they're just outside. I think they're second only to Illinois. In the loss column. So they're 8-3. I think they have a lot of games and such. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting as it gets down to sort of the last few weeks of the regular season. We talked, of course, Marquette swept their season series against Villanova, pulling away from them. I saw a little bit of that game. Look, Jaka Smart's gotten those, the Eagles playing pretty well. We forgot to mention this to Kaitlin, but because she, of course, she grew up in that area. But yeah, it's gonna be very, it's just see how far they can go because, like I said, 2 of their their 4 losses that Villanova has happened at the hands of Marquette. So we'll see if they can kind of keep it up. Xavier keeping pace with them, the Big East. I'm talking about Villanova. They just edge out Butler by a point. Notre Dame, they needed that win against Miami. Miami, like I said, they're in near the top. They may look, the AC may only get 2 teams this year. That's how down the ACC is. Yeah. That's I'm not trying to be funny, but that's true. I mean, they're down right now in the ACC.
They usually get about 4 to 5 teams in there.
Right now, but now the rumors are that they may only get 2. So, take that. Yeah, that's pretty bad. So, and that Miami loss to Notre Dame, didn't help. So, but going into last night, Arizona, split their season series with UCLA. I know they've been having. I know Ju Zhang's out with COVID issues. I think they lost another guy too with an injury. So they able to get the best of that. Split that series. USC beat Arizona State, by 5 last night as well. So the Pac-12 starting to kind of get back into the regular scheduling because of COVID. They had to delay a couple of seasons. So, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's still very wide open. The Pac-12. It could come down to Arizona, UCLA, and USC. We'll see what happens. Stanford may have something to say about it as well, but we'll see.
Yeah, a couple of other games to highlight from this past week, Lakeena. Kansas got back on track with a big road win at Iowa State, 70-61. And Michigan State, as I mentioned, they're tied with Wisconsin for second place in the Big Ten conference standings. They get by Maryland, 65-63.
And also to Kentucky, staying that Wednesday, Kentucky, held off the Fighting Jerry Stackhouses and Vanderbilt by 7. But we talked about this guy a few weeks ago, Oscar Chabouis. Had another. He's averaging 15 points. So he had 16 to lead the way for 15 rebounds. I should say he led the way for Kentucky. He's on pace to be the most. To be average for the most in D1 history in the last 40 seasons. So, it's going to be interesting, to average over 15 rebounds. That's rare in D1.
Very
so he's
rare.
been kind of the guy, kind of the big man out front for him. He's been sort of key to kind of keep, the points going. And, he's one of the reasons why Kentucky is right there in the top 5 right now. They had their struggles earlier in the year, but look, Calipari guys playing well now.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Kentucky going forward. You're listening to Second City Sports on the Friday edition. We're live and in living color right here on Sports on Chicago. Sid Lakeena here with you. Let's go to some of the big time games for Saturday and Sunday. Let's start with tomorrow's action, Lakeena, on Fox at 11 o'clock a.m. Chicago time. We have number 12 Villanova hosting number 17 the UConn Huskies. That game will be on Fox. At the same time on ESPN, number 18 Illinois will travel to Indiana to take on the Hoosiers. Shout out to our good colleague and friend of the show, Shea Pepler. I know she'll be rooting hard for her Hoosiers. Big game for both teams. Indiana the upset win over Purdue has been their launching pad. They had the same record as the Fighting Atlanta at 16-5. I know some people may overlook the Hoosiers, but this is going to be a big game for both teams.
Yeah, Indiana needs this win to freshen up their resume for the tournament. I think that
this will be a
Purdue
big win for them. They can get by Illinois. They do have a shot.
Yeah, that Purdue win, helps, but I think you need another one. I think having an Illinois team come in, as high as they are. Yeah, I think if he get my whistle will have his guys ready, but can they execute? I think that's been the kind of like the question there. Auburn, they have Georgia at noon on the SEC network.
Bruce Pearl's cheating ass, but
all right. Tom, unfortunately, it's not going well for Tom Crean down in Athens, but look, if you can beat the number one team in the country, this can only help. So,
well, he got Anthony Edwards into the NBA, and that's just been his only.
He's playing pretty well too. He's
yeah.
Look, don't disturb him while he's ordering McDonald's. He'll give him a second. Did you see that video? That's like, oh my god, that is so like he's only 19, so that's just so so like.
If you don't know what we're talking about, go to social media, go to YouTube.
Yeah.
We know what we're talking about.
You know what you're talking about. Just Google the answers at McDonald's. You'll get a nice little laugh. Tennessee against South Carolina. That's that's CBS at noon. The Fighting Frank Martins. I'm sure Frank Martin will have his guys ready for that game. Maybe they could probably pull off an upset. We'll see. Texas Tech against West Virginia on ESPN at 1:00. Northwestern and Nebraska, also a noon game on the Big Ten Network. DePaul, I know. Well, yeah, DePaul hoping to bounce back. They gotta go Xavier. DePaul. I know they've had some issues. I know that their top scorer. I know they just came back, but they've struggled. They're kind of. I'm gonna ask my buddy Dave Kerner. Can I go back to being my circus to DePaul now? Can I please? We
gotta get him back on the show.
Yeah, we do. We got to get him back on. Iowa State and Texas. Iowa State hoping to. Kind of had to bounce back for them. Both teams are coming off for losses. Of course, Iowa State against Kansas, Texas against Texas Tech. So that's on the Longhorn Network if you have it.
Yeah, Michigan at number 4, Purdue tomorrow at 1:30 on Fox. That's going to be an interesting one. Can Michigan pull off an upset win on the road? They'll definitely help their resume. At 3:00 on ESPN, number 8, Baylor, the defending national champs, they'll travel to Kansas to take on the Jayhawks. Kansas ranked number 10 in the country. At 3:00 on FS1, number 13, Michigan State will travel to Rutgers. At 4:00 on Fox, number 19, USC, the Trojans will go to Arizona to take on the Wildcats. Arizona's ranked number 7 in the country. And then the primetime game at 5:00 on ESPN, number 9, Duke will travel to Chapel Hill to take on the North Carolina Tar Heels. Duke checks in with the 18-3 mark. North Carolina, shout out Petey Pablo. They stay with a record at 16-6.
You always throw the records out the window when these two teams play each other. I know the game day, their basketball version of game day will be there in Chapel Hill, visiting with their old colleague and former, North Carolina star Hubert Davis. It's gonna be a nice little reunion there between those guys. Of course, Davis, played in that, that bloody, the bloody Montrose game. If you remember that from '92, Duke was the defending champion at number 1 in the country then, and North Carolina was able to pull it off, which is weird. And they actually stormed the court in the old D. Smith Center.
Yeah.
Which look, they were like 13 at the time, so I don't know why they were storming the court, but I guess you play your rivals. I guess that happens, but we'll see. I mean, North Carolina needs this to freshen up that resume, and I'm sure Hubert Davis will have his guys ready, and we'll see what surprise that the North Carolina fans have in store for Mr. Mike Krzyzewski, who this will be his last game coaching in the Dean Dome.
Yeah, one more. We could go down so many memories between these two teams. Remember Austin Rivers, Doc Rivers' son? That's what basically got him in the NBA with that shot back in, I want to say, 2012.
Yes,
I believe.
Yep, I know what you're talking
about. If I had the year correct.
yes. And also, too, the 95 one with, I think Cable was on that team.
I think it was the year that Coach K was sick.
Yeah, and look, I forgot who was coaching, for him at the time. I keep forgetting who it was, but of course, Jerry Stackhouse and that massive dunk, and the Rasheed Wallace and Cherokee Parks and all those guys. That was
Vince Carter.
Yep. Yes, Vince Carter, of course, he was there too. So that was
Anton Jameson.
Yes. So many like great. And again, Duke was struggling, mainly because Coach K wasn't there. But of course, like I said before, you always throw the records out the window when these two teams play each other. So that should be a fun one down there. Early game though at 5:00. So.
Yep. And wrapping up the Saturday schedule for tomorrow, number 25 LSU pays a visit to Vanderbilt on the SEC Network. That's at 5 o'clock. Kentucky at Alabama on ESPN at 7 o'clock. Immediately following Duke in North Carolina. At 9 o'clock on ESPN, number 2 Gonzaga will visit BYU.
That should be
And
fun.
number 3 UCLA will play Arizona State at 9 o'clock on ESPN2.
Yeah, that BYU Gonzaga game should be a lot of fun. The West Coast Conference, some people say, could get 3 or 4 teams this year. So
The Missouri Valley, as we told you the last couple of weeks, that's the case. You could be in trouble. Just saying.
Yeah, exactly. Going to Sunday's matchups, you got Providence and Georgetown. That's 11 a.m. on FS1. Maryland at Ohio State. That's on CBS at noon.
Big game for Ohio State. Big game.
Yeah, they got to keep pace with Illinois and Purdue and them in the Big Ten. Minnesota and Iowa. This could be an elimination game for whoever ends up, hopefully either one of these teams are hoping to, have a chance to perhaps.
Minnesota needs that game more than Iowa does.
That is true. And Loyola and Missouri State's hoping Loyola.
The revenge. Yeah,
the revenge. That's at 1 o'clock on ESPN2. So. Also, too, let's go back to Friday. I didn't get a chance to bring this up, but the Mountain West, if you remember that, back in the day, they could get 4 teams too for the first time in a long time. San Diego State and Colorado State, these are the 2 of the top 4 teams. The kids are love there at 8 o'clock at FS1 tonight. So make sure you guys check out some West Coast basketball. You might be seeing one or both these teams in the tournament, so you make sure you want to check that game out.
And one more game of note for Sunday in college basketball. Number 6 Houston, the Cougars will take on the Cincinnati Bearcats on the road. That's at 5 o'clock on Sunday on ESPN2. Houston is ranked number 6 in the country, 19-2. Cincinnati checks in with the 15-6 mark. If
you're Cincy, I think this is definitely like one of those games where you need this to kind of beef up that resume. So if you can beat number 6 Houston, they're undefeated in the conference right now. That'd be a great resume builder.
Yep, so that's the weekend schedule for the world of college basketball. You listen to Second City Sports right here on Sports Zone Chicago, the Friday edition of the program, the first Friday show for the month of February. Happy Black History Month, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. Lakeena, we do have an NBA trade to report.
Ooh, I just saw this, yeah.
Yeah, from Adrian Wojnarowski. The Clippers are trading guard Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a pick to the Portland Trail Blazers for Norman Powell and Robin Covington, Chicago's very own. So you expected me to read off Damian Lillard's name? That did not happen. That did not happen. So one more again, as the kids would say.
Yes, please.
The Clippers are trading Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, and a pick to the Blazers for Norman Powell and Robin Covington. That is it. So Damian Lillard, as of right now, is a member of the Portland Trail Blazers.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy that that's basically like half their bench. So maybe they're dumping salary. Maybe they think they have a shot to perhaps maybe go beyond get out of that play-in game. The Clippers look, Steve Ballmer is like kind of one of the craziest owners I've seen. So who knows what he has in his head, but. Okay. I mean, look, I think they need that more help off the bench, and they Powell and also Covington can kind of do that for him. So we'll see. I mean, that's a lot to give up, but Bledsoe had his struggles this season with the Clippers, so maybe they figured that they had to give up on him.
All right, Lakeena, we have some sports media news to pass along to you. Let's start out locally here in Chicago, ESPN 1000. We congratulate Fred Huber on his retirement. He retired early this year. Of course, he worked at he worked at 670 score for many years. He was one of the pioneers over there to help get local sports radio off the ground. Of course, he worked with ESPN radio here in Chicago for the last decade or so. He retired at the start of this year. Their weekend programming has gotten a big boost. Of course, You have White Sox Weekly kicking it off on Saturdays at 9 a.m. Of course, our guy Pat Boyle for NBC Sports Chicago in front of the show. Of course, with the hockey show at 10 o'clock from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. starting tomorrow on ESPN 1000 in Chicago. Good friend of the show, Miss Dion Miller, will co-host the weekend show with Peggy Kaczynski, I should say, the former NBC5 sports anchor reporter here in Chicago. Of course, she has a podcast with her son on the Barroom Network. So those two lovely ladies who knows a heck of a lot more sports than anybody around, those two will co-host. Exactly. So Dion Miller and Peggy Kaczynski will co-host ESPN Chicago Weekends on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Lakeena, I cannot wait. My Saturday plans have changed a little bit, so I guess I have to watch the Best of Soul Train via my DVD or YouTube at 9 in the morning, so I can listen to those lovely ladies live and in living color.
It'll be
Yeah. So for those of you that cannot get ESPN 1000 outside the Chicago area, just download the ESPN Chicago app or the ESPN app, and it'll connect you to ESPN Chicago. Lakeena, this is a return for Peggy Kaczynski. Remember, she had the extra point 19 years ago when she was last on that station before she took the job at NBC5. And that's how I found out that Ron Artest, who was a rookie with the Chicago Bulls back in the day, now Meta World Peace. That's how I found out through her show that Ron Artest was broke. Now I knew why he was broke, because he was trying to get some deals for some woofers at Circus City. I'm telling my age, but she had a great show on that station way back when the ESPN 1000 Chicago was just starting up. And now she's back at the station. Her and Dion Mel will both do a great job.
Yeah, I could definitely see those two having great chemistry. I know they've been colleagues for a while. I know this is a lot of fun. I'm glad, shout out to Nate Zimmerman, for making this move. And I think it was it was opened up, thanks to, of course, Freddie Hubner retiring. So this is a great move, by them, and I think they're going to do a great job. And I'll definitely be checking out the podcast.
Yes, so congratulations to those lovely ladies. We had to get Deion Miller back on the program very soon. I know she's busy, but we got to definitely get Peggy Kaczynski on this show down the line. So, like I said, we have great respect for both of these lovely ladies. They know their sports. They know what they're talking about. They're going to engage with the fans, I'm sure, and they're going to bring great insight and a different perspective than the other hosts that you hear around town. So this is a great step up. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of a lot of fun.
Yeah. And speaking of keeping with our theme with ladies in the media, on February 9th, which is next week, it's coming up very close, ESPN will have their NBA telecast with the Jazz, I believe, the Golden State Warriors. We're going to have an all-female crew in front of the camera and behind the camera. Beth Mowins and Doris Burke will be calling the action for that game this coming Wednesday.
Yeah, and also Lisa Saltis will be doing the sideline reporting as well. And look, I think, we know Beth Mullins, and look, they're, she's called pretty much every sport for ESPN, from college and pro, and she's damn good. And we know Doris Brooke is damn good at her job too. So, this is a great, thing that ESPN is doing. They've done it before. So I think, this is a great move by them. So yeah, it should be a great game too. Not just the fact that they're going to be, all women, in front and behind the scenes, but it's good. Yeah. So it's definitely going to be a lot of fun, and I'll definitely be tuning into that game, that Warriors Jazz game, next Tuesday. I mean, next Wednesday, I should say. My bad.
Yeah, so that should be a whole lot of fun. Anything else then you need to get off your chest before we close up shop for this week?
Well, we want to give a shout out to another friend of the show, our buddy Mark Grody. He's been, tapped to the first part of, the first 3 days of the score overnights. Of course, Les Grobstein sadly, passed away suddenly a few weeks ago. And, shout out to Mitch Rosa for wanting to keep it live and local. So he's going to do it. Mark's going to do it for the first 3 days. And they're going to have a rotation of hosts. Your buddy Chris Rongji, Sid, who's, of course, Chris is a big White Sox fan, for those of you people who don't know. He's going to be part of that.
He used to do a White Sox pre- and post-game show. Yes. Yeah, when they had the White Sox on years ago.
Yeah, so he's going to be, a part of the rotation of hosts. I'll be doing it on the nights that Mark isn't doing it. So I'm glad that that Mitch decided to kind of keep it local. And look, that I don't know how, we were talking about it last, a few weeks ago when Grobber passed away suddenly. I don't know how he did it. Midnight to 5 a.m. That's especially if we have games. We have West Coast Cubs games, and Bulls games and things like that. And for those of you who are wondering, Mark's still going to do the Bears, sidelines and stuff. So I'm sure, the schedule will probably be a little bit more sporadic when he does it during the Bears season. But yeah, I'm happy for him, and the other guys are going to be doing it. And I'm glad. And also too, you should go at Mark Grory Sports. He's been here sharing some pretty interesting stories about this new gig, and his pet's not very happy with him either. So just for him too. So.
One more note before we close out shop, Lakeena. Where were you at on this date 15 years ago today?
I think my mind's starting to go. I think that's why my old age is showing. But yeah, I have I forgot. I forgot where it was.
Today is the 15-year anniversary of the Indianapolis Colts defeating the Chicago Bears in Super Bowl 41. Of course, this was the Super Bowl that featured two Black American head coaches in Lovie Smith for the Bears and Tony Dungy of the Indianapolis Colts. Lakeena, I was working at Sporting News Radio in Northbrook here in Chicago. They wanted me to go down there, but they couldn't work it out for me to go do my thing down there because I would have been happy as as a Bears fan working in this industry and covering the team that I grew up watching up close. But I was back in the studio, running the board and watching that game. Of course, Devin Hester, who's up for the Hall of Fame this year, he's the only man up to this point to run back at opening kickoff for a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Of course, the Bears scored on the next possession on the Musa Muhammad touchdown pass from Rex Grossman. Of course, in the second half, the Bears only scored 3 points. Of course, Prince performed with the FAMU band at halftime, which was great, but that performance was better than the Bears' second half performance. Of course, we remember from the Bears, Cedric Benson fumbled the ball. Rex Grossman fumbled the ball a couple of times. Of course, there was raining throughout periods of that game. Cedric Benson injured his knee. Of course, Ron Rivera and Lovie Smith went at it. Philosophy-wise, of course, that prompted Ron Rivera to leave. And of course, everybody and their mama wanted to get paid off the Bears following that loss. It was just crazy following that game. But that's the anniversary I wanted to share with you guys as we close up shop here today. It's a difference of what the two franchises are at right now. Of course, Indianapolis, they still treading water, even though Frank Reich is very good head coach. The Bears are still trying to get it right. Of course, after Lovie Smith, he had Trestman, John Fox, Matt Nagy, now Matt Eberflus to try to get this team back to glory.
I remember that game very well, and it's sort of one of those games where you're sort of like there are people that are chanting for Brian Griese. If Griese had been out there, maybe they would have had
Rex is a quarterback.
I don't know if that would have been the case. I'm sure if you ask him now, he's not going to tell you if that were the case or not. He's not going to tell you, but I think they would have had a shot had they may have pulled Rex and they put him out there. But again, that's just me, and it would be perfect too. Of course, his dad played for the Dolphins and this like that and this and that. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of one of those things where you're kind of like, you wonder what would have happened had they had won it. Could this let off a dynasty? They still had a really solid, really great defense and such. So I don't know. I mean, we'll never know, unfortunately. But yeah, that was and Peyton started his run, and of course Tony Dungy became the first Black head coach to win a Super Bowl title. Ironic that we're talking about this with all the stuff going on with the Flores lawsuit and such. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely actually it made a pretty good Super Bowl, even though of course the Bears ended up on the losing end of it. But yeah, we'll see what happens, especially with Hester getting into the Hall of Fame and such. So we'll find that out next weekend of Avi. But yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, that was a very not a good memory for Bears fans, but definitely a good Super Bowl though. Hopefully we'll have one this year too, because
the strange thing about it was the Bears were in that game to Rex Grossman threw that interception in the fourth quarter. I forgot who picked it out. Was it Bob Sanders? I know he made the hit on Cedric Benson, but
Sanders? I think it was Sanders. I think Sanders was the one. I think that caught that interception. I think I'm not sure.
I'll look at it this weekend as I have one half of my face closed looking at the highlights, but. The Bears were still in it, but Thomas Jones, who was the starting running back on that team, of course, he left after that. Of course, Cedric Benson had the starting job for that next year. It was ugly, as you know. But I'll purge off this camera about that 016. The way it ended is boy. All right, let me shut up and you close up shop.
Yeah, also to get to for those of you who are going to Wintrust Arena tomorrow, you get to see LeBron's kid, Bronny, is going to be his Sierra Canyons team is going to be playing at a Wintrust Arena, I should say. So that should be a fun. I'm sure tickets are kind of selling like hotcakes for that game. So I forgot who they're playing. I thought they were playing one of the area teams, but I got to look that up right quick. But you can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter and at Keenan McGee on the IG.
Shout out to Armando. You have a great weekend as well.
You too,
great to see
Armando.
you back and healthy and watching us. Tell everybody you know about us on Second City Sports. You can follow yours truly, Sidney Brown, aka Sid the Kid. You can follow me on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you download our podcast, courtesy of War or Anchor. We are available on all podcast platforms. Make sure you type in that search engine boxes, WARR on Anchor. And you can follow War Media on all social media platforms at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. And they're playing Simeon tomorrow, so they're one of the top teams in the state. So if you guys get a chance, that's an 8:00 game. Make sure you guys check that out. I think they're in the top 5, I think, in the country. Simeon, I think they only got one. They only have one loss. So if you, I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. I don't know if it's going to be on TV. I'm sure it's going to be ESPN Plus will have us, or I'm sure someone's going to have it on YouTube and stuff. So make sure.
Right. Check YouTube. Someone's going to put something up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
we like to thank Kaitlin Sharkey, friend of the show from Fox 32 Chicago Sports, for hopping on with us. You can check her out weekdays. And I think she's going back to doing the Sports Zone, the Sunday night show with Lou Canellis every Sunday night from 10 to 10:30 locally here in Chicago on Fox 32. So check her out and make sure you follow her at K Rose Sharkey, the lady K Rose Sharkey, on Instagram and Twitter. So make sure you catch this show, Second City Sports, every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Once again, every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
And make sure you guys be careful out there, folks. I know it's a little cold, and I know we're dealing with a lot of snow right now. Just make sure you don't walk, don't run. If you try to shovel snow, pace yourselves. And if you're not going to get vaccinated, wear your mask, wash your hands, and mind your business. For Sid, I'm Lakeena. This has been Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you Monday. With Super Bowl week starting Monday.
Till then, go Bulls, holla!